Production funding is brought to you in part by A. Reddix and Associates, a healthcare management consulting firm bridging the gap between healthcare policy and the community through education, training, and outreach. Find out more at ardx.net. Discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Ever so often, we like to invite thoughtful people onto our show to talk about the things people in the African American community are talking about. And folks are talking about President Obama and his obligation, or not, to acknowledge and address a Black agenda in this country. Here to talk about it is Wil LaVeist, Director of Community Outreach and Development with the Urban League of Hampton Roads, Dr. Carol Pretlow, Associate Professor of Political Science at Norfolk State University, and one of our staples here on Another View, community activist Bill Thomas. Welcome to the program, everybody. How you doing?
Thank you.
Good. Okay, I want to kick it off right off the bat. Will, do we have a Black agenda, and if so, what is it?
Well, we absolutely, somebody would have a Black agenda. It's a matter of who should it come from? Should it come from the president, or should it come from the leaders in the community? And I know from the standpoint of the Urban League, our national president, Mark Morial, was absolutely one of the individuals who met with the president. The Urban League has a program and a set of programs that actually address, and initially was founded 100 years ago as we celebrate our anniversary, to focus on those issues concerning the African American community. So absolutely, is the leaders who are most focused on the issues and culturally the ones that should have.
But what are the issues, Carol? I mean, what if you say the Black agenda, what does that mean?
Well, you know, I don't think that agenda is very separate from America as a whole. I think you're talking about employment, education, the environment, I call them the 3 E's. And it is, I agree with you in part and disagree with in part, because I think it comes basically from the ground up, but it takes a president and a Congress to implement them. Mm-hmm.
But Bill, Tavis Smiley held the We Count the Black Agenda is the American Agenda forum, and they were screaming and shouting that the president is not paying attention to a Black agenda. Well, first, do you agree there is one?
There should not be one. There is not one, and we should work toward being Americans. Tavis Smiley is a handsome-looking entertainer. He is not a leader. He's a handsome, very debonair entertainer. Once we as Americans who with African descent decide to be Americans and stop being divisive among ourselves and among our majority white Caucasian community, we will never have success. We will never be successful. I was just looking at a statistic that came off Capitol Hill today. In the past 27 years, 252,000 African Americans have died on our streets. 252,000.
In what time frame?
27 years. The past 27 years. 252,000. That's larger than the population of Norfolk and Portsmouth and maybe Hampton and Portsmouth together. We have our organizations, not like when we were growing up. The NAACP is irrelevant. The 100 Black men are irrelevant. The Urban League, in my opinion, is irrelevant. Because if we continue to divide ourselves from the whole, because we have a competitive global environment that we have to contend with. White folks are going to get mad with us. They're going to leave us alone like they are now. And they're going to do what Dick Gregory said 20 years ago. They're going to go find themselves some new Negroes, which they have, and they're called Mexicans.
Well, I think if you look at the disparities that exist in our community, where health, wealth, education, clearly, someone has been mad at us or something, there is a need for an agenda, because otherwise we would have equality, it would already be in existence. To say that we should not have an agenda is ignoring the history of being disadvantaged in this country over the years that we have been in this country. And these organizations that you talk about were focused not on separating us from America, but getting us included and on the table and on the agenda of America. So these organizations are still very much relevant. The Urban League very much has programs that are about getting people engaged and empowered and engaged in the system of America. So to say that we don't have one or we should not have one is to really be a little bit, quite frankly, naive.
Absolutely don't have
naive about the history of this country.
Okay, Carol,
and
go ahead.
I agree with you completely, Will, because I think if you say that we do not have an agenda that's separate, means that you're going to disregard some very relevant institutions. Historically, Black universities have a commitment and a mission that is to join with the American agenda, but also to recognize that we are light years perhaps behind mainstream America. The very fact that we have a disparity in employment, the very fact that we have some health care issues that are not being addressed by mainstream America means that we need these organizations and African American institutions to help us bridge that gap.
Okay,
and
but
we
let me
can't
ask
do
this question. Is it the president's responsibility, since he is African American, to specifically address that agenda in addition to or over top of some other agendas that he has to deal with?
Absolutely not, and he has not, and he will not. He can't, number one, politically do it. If he does it politically, he will lose, because he will lose his base. The only thing about Barack Obama that's African American is his skin color. He went to the most prestigious elementary schools, private schools, all of his life. He was raised by white grandparents. He went to Harvard, a white school. He lived in a white neighborhood. Now he lives in the White House. There is he sends his children to white private schools. There is absolutely nothing in his background about
So
that.
African Americans don't go to Harvard. African Americans are not raised by whites.
Americans go to Harvard. Americans go to Harvard.
So you're not arguing that because he had the opportunity to go to Harvard that he's not black?
He took his advantage to do what he had to do, absolutely. And he never used being an African American as an excuse for anything. He excelled in everything he had to do.
I don't think they're looking at the disparities that exist and saying disparities exist.
As an example.
There needs to be some...
Well, come on.
No, as an example.
Now, there are disparities. And there's disparities in the unemployment numbers. There's disparities in the
because our black kids are too lazy to go to work.
Wait. We got to make sure.
They won't go to work.
Okay, now he started by saying entertainment. This is entertainment.
But hold on,
entertainment.
because I want to be able to. I want everybody to be able to hear.
In our neighborhood. I understand that. But I'm talking the reality. I'm talking the truth.
But Carol, I don't think you're talking the truth when you say our black kids are lazy. The thing of it is that when you come into a situation and sometimes there are forces outside of your personal choice that mean that you have to work, that you have family responsibilities, that you are playing catch up, that's not being lazy. It's dealing with the realities and the fact that they're in school scuffling and trying and doing the best they can means that they are not lazy. They still have some weaknesses, and that's the job of the educational. It's not an excuse. It's an excuse.
Now, Barbara, you asked about whose responsibility is it. Now, the president's responsibility is to be the president of the United States, of all of the people of the United States. He's also responsible to look at the issues that are going on with his people, all of the people. And what he said at your institution, your historically black institution, that existed to get people included. One of the things that he said was that it's everyone's responsibility to address these educational disparities that exist. That's exactly what he should be doing. Now you've got the individual leaders of these different constituent groups that should be fighting for the issues of their constituents groups, whether they be African American, whether they be the gay and lesbian community, whether they be Hispanics, whoever it is. The president's responsibility is to create an environment by which his people can prosper, do what he can do.
Now, Tavis, and he is here on PBS, so I will make that caveat very clear. But their argument, and the people who were on this forum, Farrakhan, Reverend Jackson, Angela Glover Blackwell, Michael Eric Dyson, Cornel West, Julianne Malveaux, the president of my alma mater, all got together, and their argument was that they are worried when other black leaders say we should not hold President Obama to a black agenda, that it is the agenda for everyone. Because they feel, I take from what they're saying, they feel that there won't be any attention paid to the real issues that affect our community differently than it affects other communities.
I can tell you what Mark Morial said about that was a misrepresentation of what happened at the meeting. And what he said was that what he discussed was the need for jobs, and that there needs to be some targeted efforts going into communities that are most affected by this economy.
So he didn't say just black people. He
That's
said
right.
Whoever needs the jobs.
And when you look at the disparities and the realities that exist, you see how black people are most affected. So if you make those targeted efforts, by naturally, they are going to, you're going to have a benefit that's going to come from it. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about separating ourselves. We're talking about inclusion and looking at and having programs like what the Urban League has that are open to everyone, saving people from losing their homes, whether you're white, black, or whatever, to specifically target the needs that are there.
Carol, there's a discussion also that the Congressional Black Caucus in this administration does not have the same clout or opportunity that it has had to bring forth some of these issues as it has had in previous administrations. So in other words, because it's a black man in the White House, they don't, because it's a Congressional Black Caucus, they don't have the opportunity to get in there and fight for those issues. So therefore they're not relevant. What do you think about that?
I heard that argument. I do not agree that they are not relevant. They are still relevant because they are closer to the electorate than the president even would be. The issues that directly affect the black community, and many of them are representative of black districts, means that they are the nexus between the public, the lower level of the electorate, and the president. I see them as being very relevant. I see them as presenting issues that are very much connected to the black community. But I don't think that is their only job. I think their other part of their job is to understand that society is going to be more diverse and that they are going to have to coalesce with the Hispanic community, in cases with the lesbian gay community, and with other communities as well, and to come up with programs that are inclusive of all of them.
Bill's over there about to pop. Go ahead.
I'm not the pop. I just think we're living in a dreamland. Our children, for the most part, are unchurched. I just read a survey in USA Today last week that said only 20% of our children go to church, have any faith whatsoever. 40% of the abortions in America is done by black women. It's the lazy that I'm talking about is not working hard, twice as hard, like you were told, like you were told, like you were told, so we could be competent. And as long as we use this, what I call evil anvil, to try to leverage ourselves beyond the hard work that we have to do by saying that we are trying to coalesce with the gay community, I'm not. I'm trying to coalesce with things that are godly, that are principled, that we were brought up, that brought our families together. And that's what I'm talking about by being lazy, by not going to school, by not taking it serious, by letting two schools, middle school in Norfolk, be under threat right down the street from Norfolk State, Ruffner Middle School. They're going to close it. And then for us not to be fighting like all hell is broke loose, what are we? What have we become? I'm not interested in the gay agenda.
So your whole point, even if there's a black agenda, we need to be dealing with it on a grassroots level.
Absolutely. We need to get up off our knees, stop praying, and get out and do the work. And the Black Caucus is effective. Just because they're not out there shouting and marching in the streets, Elijah Cummings, Congressman Bobby Scott, they're out there working hard, bringing millions of dollars to our communities as a whole so that we can be competitive. But don't jump on the word lazy by not knowing that only 16 African-American males in Norfolk Public Schools graduated 2 years ago with a B average. None were accepted at UVA. None were accepted at Virginia Tech. None were accepted at the College of William and Mary. So you tell me what it is.
But you blame that totally on the students?
Yes, I do. Yes, Carol. I do. And their parents. I do.
Carol. I don't.
Not on the white man. Leave the white man alone. It's us.
I haven't mentioned the white man, and I don't think that it is lazy. I think it is a combination of things. Sure, some of it, maybe a large percent of it, is on individual initiative. But that individual initiative takes place in the context of a family, a community, and a whole list of other socioeconomic factors. It's not just the individual.
We won't even get married. Our marriage rates are lower than they've ever been before. Now, if that's the ultimate epitome of what I'm saying.
Well, anytime Bill mentions God, he's going to get me on his side. As long as it's in a positive context.
Amen.
And I agree with many of that. But also, what she's saying is absolutely right. This is about inclusion and looking at the realities of what is going on and attacking the situation on all prongs as opposed to blaming it on one aspect of what the situation is. And there's no way you can tell me, as someone who has gone through public schools and has been in situations where I've been discouraged by counselors, and if you take a young mind who is 14, 15 years old and impressionable and being discouraged, that can't have a negative impact. Now, I would also say, and we would also agree on this as educators, that there are a lot of kids that are not willing to work as hard as they should. That is true. But to blanket that as an entire community,
well, I was going to say, that's not just a
that's
black
not the
problem.
case.
That's
another thing.
problem.
That's a generational problem.
Sure.
And again, to come back to the fact of the entire United States, education and the devaluing of academics is happening across the board. It's happening across. It's not only in our community.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it okay for us to criticize the first black president?
Absolutely.
Meaning the community.
Yes.
Absolutely. But I'm commending him for being this. And see, I'm considered to be a radical, a right wing, a teabagger. Well, let me finish because I say our. But see, I don't see. But Barbara, listen to what I'm saying, Will. I don't say our in the context of being black. I say our in the context of being an American. You are the ones that put in the context that I'm talking about black folks, not me. Because I see my existence, I know what I am. Am I black and an American, or an American who's black? I'm an American who just happens to be black. So my context of who I'm talking about is just not confined. That's the bigotry that I get from some folks
when you see
who
the
can tell
disparities that exist, the numbers, the disparities in terms of unemployment, in terms of health care access, in terms of wealth, you see that how blacks are negatively affected by that, and on the short end of that. You see that as an American problem. How did blacks become...
No, that's not the question you should be asking me.
But I'm asking you.
The question is, does racism exist in America? And it does.
Does it?
And it does.
So you deal with racism.
So you do deal with that.
So
yes, you know how I deal with it? The same way
what,
your parents told you and yours. We work twice as hard.
I can't even respond to that. I mean, working twice as hard, though, Bill, when you have systematic things that are in place that cause a problem, cause you to keep you from being able to attain, is an issue, because you can work as hard as you want.
And that's what the agenda addresses. The systematic things are in place.
The only way you change it
that's
an
what the
agenda is with the
addresses.
Second Amendment, is with guns. If you feel that you are so not being taken in by a group, you don't change it. You change it with action. My action is working twice as hard, praying twice as hard, and doing double the road. And not blame anybody else other than me for my ineffectiveness.
Hold on, Karen.
I agree with that, but I also understand that from the educational perspective, you can work twice as hard, you can do everything you can, but if you are first generation, whether it's teacher, lawyer, doctor, Indian chief, and you have no models, you're still working as hard, but it might mean that things are a little bit more difficult, and that there is a responsibility of people from the community, like the 200 plus men, to provide some guidance.
Well, but I mean, isn't that in essence what's going on with the president? This is the first one. And so therefore, he has no other role models in terms of African Americans leading in this way. So is it incumbent then upon our other leaders to shore him up or to tear him down?
They're tearing him down, but Barbara, in my generation, I've met and talked to the first African American president of the United States. I met and talked to the first female billionaire, Sheila Johnson, in the United States of America. I talked and met to the first female black astronaut and male astronaut. So things aren't always as bad. The community that I live in, which is 33% African American, is the 5th highest income community in Hampton Roads. So you can achieve, but you can't achieve if we're going to blame the white person and not blame our grassroots for marriage, having faith in God, and dealing with the things that are essential to our existence.
Well, I mean, I just like to get something straight here on the record, that I don't think you said anything about blaming. I know I haven't said anything about blaming.
It's evident
There
that
has
that's what you're saying.
nothing been said here about blaming. What has been said is that there are disparities that exist.
Who's responsible for it?
Hold
but
on.
who's responsible? No, seriously.
There are systematic issues involved in that. There are individualistic issues involved in that. it is not a simple solution. What we are not doing and talking about blaming, none of us would even be here if we ran our lives being about blaming people. So let's take that blanket, that cliche off the table.
Oh, I'm not going to take it off the table because you got your head stuck in the sand.
Okay.
Because Reverend Jesse Jackson and Reverend Al Sharpton
are not here,
and they are also people y'all consider leaders.
And Mark Moriel and Edith White, who's the executive director of this affiliate here, is not about blaming anyone.
Well,
we're about solutions, and that's why we have programs to address those solutions.
We don't need programs. We need to have faith.
Okay, let me ask you this. One last question, and we're almost down to a minute.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you got to keep these comments short. But when others outside of our community, I'm getting to the point of why people think the black community is a monolith, why we all have to think the same. Because we don't. And so when others outside of the community see us either criticizing the president or other black leaders or standing up and saying, no, I don't agree with this, how do you think they perceive us? And I'm going to start with you and then move down the line. And again, we got about a minute and a half.
Well, they perceive, I mean, I can only go by what I have faced. And everybody that I talk to perceive me as just saying that you just got to work twice as hard. Okay. I think that you have to do what you have to do.
Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
I would agree with that, but I have a problem with them seeing us as a monolith. I think there are issues that I agree with the president on, and there are issues that I disagree with him on.
Okay. Will, 15 seconds.
I think you'd be surprised that a lot of people outside of the community do not see us as a monolith. They have the same issues, and we have the issues as well.
There you go. And with that, guys, we got to say goodbye. Thank you so very much. I knew you guys would be a great panel. And I appreciate you being here on the show. And when we come back, we'll go where the wild things are. But first, a look at what's happening in Hampton Roads. The book Where the Wild Things Are was first introduced in 1963. Parents hated it because it featured a defiant little boy named Max yelling at his mother. The kids loved it. Fast forward a few decades and kids are still excited about Max and his fantasy friends. Just ask some Portsmouth school children who got the chance to experience Max's world at the Contemporary Arts Center of Virginia. As our Lisa Godley tells us, thanks to a generous grant, students got a lesson in both literature and art that they won't soon forget.
It's one thing to read Where the Wild Things Are while sitting in a reading group or lying on your bed at home, but to experience the adventure firsthand is an exceptional treat. Thanks to the Contemporary Arts Center of Virginia, thousands of children can experience Max and the Wild Things through larger-than-life illustrations. Or even better, set sail in the boat Max used to escape from the bedroom where he was on punishment to the fantasy island where the Wild Things lived.
I like Max. He's funny. They made him the king. He rode on a boat. It was so cool.
There's even a slide that dumps you out into a big bowl of chicken soup. Students from Lakeview and West Haven elementary schools came to visit the exhibit on this particular day, but thanks to the grant, more than 1,000 children from Portsmouth Public Schools will be able to experience Max and the Wild Things up close.
I think for children that have not been exposed to art, what a wonderful exhibit this can be. I've taken a granddaughter to a museum, and she wants to be an artist now, and she's 6. And so I just hope that the impact here will be is great.
We're getting an amazing response for this exhibition. There's different images from the illustrations from the books that Maurice Sendak kind of oversaw for this exhibition. He oversaw all of the printing and everything that was written for this exhibition. So he had a real personal connection to this show.
During the field trip, the students are separated into 3 groups. So while one group is checking out Max and the Wild Things, another group is delving into other exhibits.
And I like the pictures that we saw today.
What did you learn about it?
It was made out of glass and how they make glass and stuff.
Or how about lying on the floor looking up at a piece of artwork that's bursting with unusual shapes and phenomenal colors?
I saw one artifact that stays here, which was the glass artifact, and it looks like a whole bunch of snakes and balloons. And when they put new artifacts in, then we will go and see them if we want to come back and stuff.
The interesting thing about them was that it's like not everyday stuff, so it's just really interesting to look at. I enjoyed it.
The third stop for the students grants them an opportunity to become the artist by creating their own Where the Wild Things Are piece of artwork.
I know, he looks cool. I like those wings.
Because a field trip only lasts so long, and there was so much to take in, the students got a special treat, passes so they can come back with their families and do it all over again. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And two special events that I want to bring to your attention. Next Friday through Sunday is the 27th Annual AFRAM Festival in Town Point Park. It's a celebration of the essence of family. And tomorrow night on our sister station, WHRV 89.5 FM, Neil Murray, host of the Saturday Night Fish Fry, will do a special tribute to Lena Horne. Be sure to tune in at 8 p.m. And that's our show for this evening. Next week, Internet Safety and Etiquette. We'll see you next time for Another View.
Production funding is brought to you in part by A. Reddix & Associates, a healthcare management consulting firm bridging the gap between healthcare policy and the community through education, training, and outreach. Find out more at ardx.net.